For 25 years, she lived with the weight of an impossible choice, watching her own daughter call another woman Mom while she played the role of the devoted aunt. Everyone believed she was the irresponsible sister who couldn't raise a child, the family failure who'd given her baby away without a second thought. But when her daughter discovered a hidden box of documents on her 25th birthday, the elegant facade her sister had built began to crumble. The successful lawyer who'd raised her, the woman everyone admired for her selfless act of taking in her sister's unwanted child, had been hiding a truth so devastating that it would shatter everything the family believed about love, sacrifice, and betrayal. This is the story of how one young woman's search for her identity exposed a deception that had destroyed lives for decades. The Madison estate sprawled across 15 acres of pristine Connecticut countryside, its manicured gardens and stone fountains speaking of old money and careful preservation. Inside the Georgian mansion's sun-drenched morning room, Charlotte Madison arranged fresh peonies in a Waterford crystal vase, her movements precise and practiced after decades of maintaining appearances. At 51, Charlotte embodied everything the Madison name represented: elegance, success, and unwavering composure. As senior partner at Madison & Associates, the law firm her late father had founded, she commanded respect in courtrooms across the state. Her silver hair was pulled back in a flawless chignon, her cream-colored suit impeccable despite the early hour. To anyone observing, she was the picture of achievement, a woman who had it all. "Mom, you're up early even for you," Lily Madison called out, entering the room with the easy confidence of someone who'd never known anything but privilege. At 25, she was the mirror image of Charlotte 30 years ago, the same striking cheekbones, the same determined set to her jaw, the same brilliant mind that had earned her a spot at Yale Law, following in her mother's footsteps. Charlotte's smile was warm but didn't quite reach her eyes, a detail Lily had noticed more frequently lately. The Harbinger case requires extra preparation. The depositions start Monday. "You work too hard," Lily said, pouring herself coffee from the sterling silver service that had been set out by the housekeeper. Even Dad used to say that, and he was hardly one to talk about work-life balance. The mention of Richard Madison, dead now 3 years from a heart attack, caused a slight tension in Charlotte's shoulders. "Your father understood the importance of diligence. It's why the firm has thrived for 60 years. Lily studied her mother over the rim of her cup. "Is Aunt Emma coming to the birthday party next week? I haven't heard from her in a while." This time, the tension was unmistakable. Charlotte's hand paused infinitesimally as she adjusted a peony stem. "Your aunt is traveling. You know how she is. Always restless, always moving. I believe she's somewhere in Southeast Asia this month." "She's been traveling for most of my life," Lily observed, her tone carrying a hint of something Charlotte couldn't quite identify. "Strange how she never misses sending a gift, though. Always exactly what I want, even things I've never told anyone about." Charlotte turned away, busying herself with unnecessary adjustments to the already perfect flower arrangement. Emma has always been intuitive. Even as children, she had an uncanny ability to know what people needed. "Tell me about when you were young," Lily said suddenly. "You never talk about it much. What was she like before she gave me to you?" The crystal vase trembled slightly in Charlotte's hands. She set it down carefully, her lawyer's training allowing her to maintain her composure even as her pulse quickened. "Lily, We've discussed this. Emma was very young, barely 18. She wasn't ready for the responsibility of a child. She made the choice she thought was best for everyone. But she was brilliant, wasn't she? I found her high school yearbook in the attic last month. Valedictorian, full scholarship to Princeton that she never used. Why would someone with so much promise just give up? Charlotte moved to the window, gazing out at the grounds, where a team of gardeners was already at work, despite the early hour. People make choices for reasons we don't always understand. Emma decided that travel and freedom were more important to her than conventional success. She's happy with her life. Is she? Lily pressed. When was the last time you actually spoke to her? Not just the birthday and Christmas cards, but really talked. Your aunt and I have different lives, Charlotte said, her voice taking on the crisp, professional tone she used in court. We've both made our choices and lived with them. Now, shouldn't you be preparing for your meeting with Professor Hendricks? I thought you were presenting your thesis proposal today. Lily recognized the deflection, but chose not to pursue it. You're right, I should go. She rose, crossing to kiss her mother's cheek. Mom, thank you for everything. I know it couldn't have been easy, taking on your sister's child when you were building your career. Charlotte's hand briefly touched her daughter's face, and for a moment something raw and painful flickered in her eyes. You've been the greatest gift of my life, Lily. Never doubt that. As Lily left the room, Charlotte remained at the window, her reflection showing a woman who had built an empire on a foundation she alone knew was crumbling. The morning light caught the tears she wouldn't let fall, each one carrying the weight of a quarter-century of carefully constructed lies. The law offices of Madison and Associates occupied the top 3 floors of a historic building in downtown Hartford, its windows offering panoramic views of the Connecticut River. Charlotte arrived at precisely 8:30, as she had every morning for the past 27 years, her presence immediately shifting the energy of the bustling firm. Good morning, Ms. Madison. Her secretary Janet greeted her with a stack of messages. Janet had been with Charlotte for 15 years and knew her rhythms better than anyone. Mr. Brennan is waiting in your office, and Mrs. Chen called twice about the custody hearing. Charlotte nodded, but Janet noticed the slight distraction in her employer's usually laser-focused attention. Also, Janet added more quietly, there's a personal package that arrived by courier. I put it on your desk. In her corner office, Charlotte found her law partner, Michael Brennan, reviewing documents at her conference table. At 55, Michael had been her closest ally since they'd both been hungry young associates at rival firms. He was one of the few people who'd known her before she'd become the formidable Charlotte Madison. You look tired, he said without preamble, his keen eyes studying her over his reading glasses. The Harbinger case keeping you up? Something like that, Charlotte replied, her attention drawn to the manila envelope on her desk. The return address made her blood run cold, a P.O. box in Burlington, Vermont. Emma's P.O. box. Michael followed her gaze. Everything all right? Charlotte forced herself to look away from the package. Of course. Shall we review the deposition strategy? They worked for an hour, but Michael could tell Charlotte's mind was elsewhere. Finally, he set down his pen. Charlotte, we've been partners for 12 years. I know when something's bothering you. Is it Lily? Why would you ask that? Charlotte's response was too quick, too defensive, because her 25th birthday is next week, Michael said gently. And because every year around this time you become different, more guarded, if that's even possible. Charlotte stood abruptly, moving to her window. Lily is fine. She's brilliant, actually. Top of her class, law review editor, 3 job offers already from top firms in New York. Following in her mother's footsteps, Michael observed, "You must be proud." "I am." The words came out hollow. Michael rose, approaching his partner carefully. "Charlotte, whatever happened back then?" "Nothing happened," Charlotte cut him off. "Emma had a baby she couldn't raise. I took Lily in. End of story." "Is it?" Michael asked quietly. "Because in all the years I've known you, I've never once seen Emma. Not at holidays, not at Lily's graduations, not even at Richard's funeral. That's not just distance, Charlotte. That's exile." Charlotte's hands clenched at her sides. "My sister made her choices." "Did she?" Michael pressed. "Or were they made for her?" Before Charlotte could respond, Janet's voice came over the intercom. "Miss Madison, Judge Patricia Morrison is on line 1. She says it's urgent." Charlotte grabbed the phone like a lifeline. "Patricia, what can I do for you?" Michael watched as Charlotte's face drained of color during the brief conversation. When she hung up, her hand was shaking. "What is it?" he asked. "The Burlington County Courthouse," Charlotte said slowly. "There's been a records request. Someone is pulling old sealed documents from 2001. "What kind of documents?" Charlotte sank into her chair. Patricia wouldn't say over the phone, but there's only one case from 2001 that would matter. She looked up at Michael, and for the first time in their long partnership, he saw real fear in her eyes. "The custody filing. Someone's looking into Lily's adoption records." Michael frowned. "But those should be straightforward. A private adoption between sisters." "It wasn't exactly standard," Charlotte interrupted. "There were complications." "What kind of complications?" Charlotte was saved from answering by Janet's voice again. "Ms. Madison, your 11 o'clock is here." "We'll continue this later," Charlotte said firmly, her professional mask sliding back into place. But as Michael left her office, Charlotte's eyes returned to the package from Emma. With unsteady fingers, she opened it, finding a single sheet of paper inside. The message was brief. "She deserves to know the reality. You've had a quarter century. If you won't tell her, I will." Charlotte crumpled the paper, her carefully constructed world beginning to show its first cracks. She reached for her phone, scrolling to a contact she hadn't used in 2 years. Emma's number rang once, twice, 3 times before going to voicemail. "Emma," Charlotte said, her voice barely steady. "We need to talk, please, not like this. Let me explain." She stopped, realizing the futility of explanations that were decades too late. Outside her window, Hartford continued its daily rhythm, unaware that in this corner office, a woman who'd built her life on controlling every variable was facing the one thing she couldn't control: the facts. Lily Madison stood outside the weathered brick building in Burlington, Vermont, double-checking the address on her phone. The county records office was tucked between a coffee shop and a used bookstore, its mundane appearance belying the secrets housed within. She'd driven 3 hours on impulse, skipping her afternoon classes after receiving an anonymous email. That morning, "Your birth certificate isn't what you think it is. Check the sealed records. Case number 2001 CF0847. Inside, the clerk, a middle-aged woman with kind eyes behind thick glasses, looked up from her computer. "Can I help you?" "I need to access adoption records," Lily said, proud that her voice remained steady despite her racing heart. Case number 2001 CF0847. The clerk's fingers flew across the keyboard, then paused. These records are sealed. You'll need to provide identification and proof of direct involvement in the case. Lily handed over her driver's license. I believe I'm the child in question. The clerk studied the ID, then the screen, her expression shifting to something Lily couldn't quite read. Wait here, please. 20 minutes later, Lily sat in a small conference room with a box of documents before her. The clerk had given her latex gloves and strict instructions about handling the aged papers. With shaking hands, Lily opened the first folder. The birth certificate was there as expected. Baby girl Madison, born May 15, 2001. Mother, Emma Madison. Father, unknown. But it was the second document that made Lily's world tilt. A hospital. Record showing Emma Madison, admitted for severe injuries consistent with assault, the same night Lily was born. Lily's phone buzzed. Her mother. She let it go to voicemail, turning to the next document. A police report, partially redacted, describing a domestic incident at the Madison family home. The victim, Emma Madison, age 18. The alleged perpetrator's name was blacked out, but one detail remained visible. Suspect is victim's brother-in-law, Richard. Her father, no, Charlotte's husband, had been Emma's attacker. The next folder contained legal documents that made Lily's hands shake. A petition for emergency custody, filed by Charlotte Madison, citing Emma's mental instability and inability to care for the child. But attached was a psychiatric evaluation that told a different story. Patient shows no signs of mental illness. Trauma consistent with sexual assault. Recommend therapeutic support and gradual reintegration with child. Lily photographed each document with her phone, her mind racing. The final folder contained letters, dozens of them, all from Emma to someone named Sarah Winters at a law firm in Boston. Lily recognized the name, her mother's law school roommate, now a family court judge. The letters painted a picture that made Lily's stomach churn. Emma begging for help, Emma trying to get her baby back, Emma being threatened with criminal charges if she didn't sign the adoption papers. And through it all, Charlotte's name appearing again and again, not as the savior sister, but as the architect of Emma's exile. One letter, dated December 2001, was different from the others. Sarah, she says, if I don't leave, if I don't stop trying to see my baby, she'll have me charged with abandonment. She says she has witnesses who will testify I was unstable, that I used drugs. You know I never did, that I tried to harm the baby. None of it is real, but who would believe me against Charlotte Madison? She has everything, the money, the reputation, the connections. All I have is facts, and that wasn't enough to protect me from Richard. It won't be enough to get my daughter back. I'm leaving for Prague tomorrow. Maybe someday, when Lily is old enough, she'll find these records. Maybe she'll understand that I didn't give her away. She was taken from me. Tell her I loved her. Tell her I never stopped fighting until I had no fight left. Emma. Lily's vision blurred with tears. She grabbed her phone, her fingers shaking as she searched for Emma Madison online. Nothing recent, but an old article from a Prague English-language newspaper caught her eye. American artist Emma Madison opens gallery in Old Town. The photo showed a woman who looked startlingly like Lily herself, standing before vibrant, painful paintings of mothers and children. The drive back to Hartford passed in a blur. Lily's mind replayed every birthday when her traveling aunt had sent perfect gifts. Every time Charlotte had changed the subject when Emma's name arose. Every family photo that showed only 3 people where 4 should have been. By the time she pulled into the Madison Estates circular drive, the sun was setting, casting long shadows across the perfect lawn. Charlotte's Mercedes was in its usual spot, but something felt different. The house that had always been her sanctuary now felt like a beautifully decorated prison. Inside, Lily found Charlotte in her study, a glass of wine untouched on her desk. Her mother looked up, and Lily saw the reality written across her face before either of them spoke. "You know," Charlotte said simply. "I know," Lily confirmed, her voice steady despite the storm inside her. "Now tell me why." Charlotte's study had witnessed many difficult conversations over the years, hostile divorces, custody battles, corporate betrayals. But none had carried the weight of this moment. Mother and daughter faced each other across decades of carefully constructed lies, the air between them electric with unspoken accusations. "Sit down," Charlotte said, gesturing to the leather chair across from her desk. "Please." "I'll stand," Lily replied, her voice cold in a way Charlotte had never heard before. "I've been sitting in ignorance for a quarter century. I think I've sat enough." Charlotte's hands shook as she reached for her wine glass, then thought better of it. "How much do you know?" "I know that Emma didn't give me away," Lily said, each word precise as a blade. "I know that Richard, the man I called Dad, the man whose memory you insisted I honor, assaulted her. I know that you used that assault to steal me from my mother. It wasn't like that." "Then what was it like?" Lily's composure cracked, her voice rising. "Because the court documents tell a very clear story. A teenage girl, raped by her brother-in-law, gives birth to a baby, and instead of protecting her, instead of getting her justice, her own sister conspires to take that baby and exile her." Charlotte stood abruptly, moving to the window. "You don't understand the whole situation. Emma was 18, traumatized, with no means to support a child. I was trying to protect everyone." "Stop." Lily's voice cut through the excuses. "Just stop. I've spent the entire drive home listening to your closing arguments in my head, all the ways you justify this. But there's no justification for what you did to her, to us." "I gave you everything," Charlotte said, whirling to face her daughter. "The best schools, opportunities Emma could never have provided. She could have, if you hadn't destroyed her life." Lily pulled out her phone, scrolling to the photos she'd taken. "Do you want to see the psychiatric evaluation? The one that said she was perfectly capable of being a mother? Or maybe the letters where she begged for visitation rights you denied?" Charlotte's face had gone pale. "How did you get these? Does it matter? The question is, how did you live with yourself? How did you look me in the eye every single day, knowing you'd stolen me from a woman whose only crime was being victimized by your husband?" "Richard was complicated," Charlotte began. "Richard was a rapist," Lily stated flatly. "And you knew. You had to have known even before Emma. There must have been signs, behaviors you explained away. And when he finally went too far, when there was proof in the form of a baby, you chose to protect him instead of your own sister." Charlotte sank back into her chair, suddenly looking every one of her 51 years. "You think it was simple? You think I had choices? Richard's family owned the law firm. One scandal would have destroyed everything our father built. Emma understood that. Emma was 18 and traumatized." Lily slammed her hand on the desk, making Charlotte jump. She didn't understand anything except that her sister, The person who should have protected her betrayed her in the worst possible way. I tried to make it right, Charlotte said weakly. The money I sent, blood money, Lily spat. 30 pieces of silver to buy her silence and her absence. Is that why she stays away? Did you threaten her if she tried to contact me? Charlotte's silence was answer enough. Lily laughed bitterly. All those years I thought she didn't want me. I thought there was something wrong with me that made my own mother give me away. Do you have any idea what that does to a child? The questions I asked myself, the therapy I needed. You had therapy because I wanted you to be healthy. I needed therapy because you built my entire life on a lie. Lily was shouting now, years of suppressed doubts and questions erupting. Every birthday card from Emma, every gift that somehow knew exactly what I needed, that was her trying to be my mother in the only way you allowed, wasn't it? Charlotte nodded miserably. And you monitored it all, controlled it all, made sure she stayed just far enough away that I'd never question the story. Lily shook her head in disgust. You're not the woman I thought you were. The brilliant lawyer, the feminist icon who broke barriers. It's all built on the destruction of another woman. Your own sister. I loved you like my own, Charlotte whispered. But I wasn't yours, Lily said simply. And the saddest part is I would have loved you anyway. If you'd just been my aunt, if you'd helped Emma raise me instead of stealing me, I would have loved you just as much. But you couldn't share, could you? You had to have everything. The career, the reputation, the child. Even if it meant destroying Emma. The sound of a car in the driveway made both women freeze. Charlotte checked her phone, confusion crossing her features. I'm not expecting anyone. But Lily was already moving toward the door, a terrible hope and certainty filling her chest. She knew somehow who would be standing on the other side when she opened it. The woman standing in the doorway was a ghost made flesh. Emma Madison, 43 years old, bore the kind of beauty that suffering had refined rather than diminished. Her dark hair, streaked with premature silver, was pulled back in a loose bun. She wore a simple black dress and carried a worn leather satchel. But it was her eyes, Lily's eyes, that held all the power in that moment. "Hello, Lily," Emma said, her voice carrying a slight European accent after decades abroad. "I'm sorry to arrive unannounced, but I received word that you'd been to Burlington today." Lily stood frozen, unable to speak, unable to move. This was her mother, her real mother. The woman she'd been taught to think of as irresponsible, flighty, selfish. But the person before her radiated a quiet strength that spoke of battles fought in silence. Emma. Charlotte appeared behind Lily, her professional composure shattered. "You can't be here. We had an agreement." "Our agreement ended the day Lily turned 25, Emma interrupted calmly. "As you well know, Charlotte. That was the term you set. A quarter century of silence in exchange for not pressing charges that we both know were fabricated." "Charges?" Lily found her voice, stepping aside to let Emma enter. "What charges?" Emma moved into the foyer with the careful grace of someone entering enemy territory. "Your mother, Charlotte, threatened to charge me with child endangerment and abandonment if I didn't sign the adoption papers and leave the country. She had witnesses ready to testify that I'd been using drugs, that I'd tried to harm you." "Lies," Lily breathed. "All lies," Emma confirmed. "But Charlotte had been building the case since the night you were born. While I was still in the hospital recovering from what Richard did, she was already laying the groundwork to take you from me Charlotte retreated to the study and the others followed. The room that had moments before witnessed Lily's confrontation with Charlotte now became the stage for a reckoning decades in the making. "I need a drink," Charlotte said, pouring scotch with unsteady hands. She didn't offer any to the others. Emma set her satchel on the coffee table and withdrew a thick folder. "I've spent a quarter-century preparing for this moment," she said, her composure remarkable. "Collecting evidence, documenting everything, waiting for the day I could finally tell you the facts without Charlotte destroying my life and yours in retaliation." "You're being dramatic," Charlotte said, but her voice lacked conviction. "Am I?" Emma pulled out a photograph, a young woman holding a newborn, her face bearing the marks of violence but her eyes full of love. "This was taken 2 days after Lily was born. The nurses had to help me hold her because my ribs were broken. Do you remember that, Charlotte? Do you remember telling me I was lucky Richard hadn't killed me?" Lily gasped, sinking into a chair. "She knew. You knew what he did. And she did more than know," Emma continued, her voice steady despite the tears tracking down her cheeks. "She helped him cover it up, paid off the hospital staff, had the police reports altered, all to protect the Madison reputation." "That's enough," Charlotte snapped, but Emma was just beginning. "Do you know what your adoptive father did for a living before he joined the law firm, Lily?" Emma asked. "He was a prosecutor. He knew exactly how to make a victim look guilty, how to twist evidence, how to intimidate witnesses. Charlotte learned well from him." Emma pulled out another document. "This is the original police report before it was altered. I had to hire a private investigator to track down the responding officer, now retired in Florida. He kept a copy because he knew something wasn't right about how the case was buried." Charlotte's glass slipped from her fingers, shattering on the hardwood floor. The sound seemed to break her last pretense of control. "You don't understand," she said desperately. "Richard threatened to destroy everything if I didn't help him. The firm, our father's legacy, my career. So you chose those things over me," Emma said simply. "Over your own sister. Over an innocent baby's right to her real mother." "I gave her a good life," Charlotte protested. "You gave her a lie," Emma corrected. "And you gave me a life sentence of exile from my own daughter. Do you know what it's like to see your child only in photographs? To send birthday gifts to a P.O. box because direct contact would violate your sister's restraining order? To know she's calling another woman mom while you're not even allowed to tell her you love her?" Lily was sobbing now, the full weight of the deception crushing her. All those years, I wondered why you didn't want me." Emma moved swiftly to kneel before her daughter, taking Lily's hands in hers. "I wanted you every second of every day. You were the only good thing that came from the worst night of my life. But Charlotte made sure I could never tell you that." "Don't touch her," Charlotte said sharply. "You have no right." "I have every right," Emma said, steelily, entering her voice as she stood to face her sister. "I'm her mother. And now, finally, she knows the reality." The three women remained frozen in their positions, Charlotte behind her desk like a defendant at trial, Emma standing with quiet authority in the center of the room, and Lily caught between them, her world reshaping with each revelation. The shattered glass at Charlotte's feet seemed to mirror the fractured family dynamic now laid bare. "You said you prepared for a quarter-century," Lily said to Emma, her voice hoarse from crying. "What did you mean?" Emma returned to her satchel, her movements deliberate and calm. "I knew this day would come. Either Charlotte would tell you the facts, or you'd discover it yourself. I needed to be ready with more than just words. She pulled out a leather-bound journal. Every letter I tried to send you that was returned. Every birthday and Christmas when I was threatened with legal action if I attempted contact. Every private investigator's report tracking your life from afar. It's all here. Charlotte laughed bitterly. Playing the victim, as always. No, Emma said quietly. Playing the long game, just like you taught me, Charlotte. Except my goal was honesty, not control. She opened another folder, revealing financial documents. Did you know, Lily, that your trust fund, the one Charlotte told you came from your grandparents, is actually funded by me? Every painting I sold, every exhibition, every commission, for the past quarter century I put 60% into an account for you. Lily's head snapped toward Charlotte. You told me grandmother left that money. It was easier than explaining, Charlotte began, than explaining that my real mother was supporting me while you kept her away, Lily finished. What else did you lie about? Emma pulled out a series of photographs. These are from my gallery in Prague. Would you like to know what I named it? She showed Lily a picture of an elegant storefront. Lily's Light. Every piece I've ever created has been about you, for you. The art critics call my work haunting maternal abstracts. They don't know they're looking at decades of grief transformed into paint. How touching, Charlotte said, but her sarcasm fell flat. You turned your pain into profit. I turned my pain into purpose, Emma corrected, and I made sure that when this day came, I could prove I never abandoned my daughter, that I was forced away by a sister who valued reputation over facts, status over family. Emma's phone buzzed. She glanced at it and smiled slightly. That would be my lawyer. She's waiting outside with additional documentation if needed. You see, Charlotte, I learned from the best. Always have backup. Always document everything. Always be prepared for war while hoping for peace. Your lawyer. Charlotte straightened, alarm flickering across her features. Sarah Winters, Emma said casually. You remember Sarah, don't you? Your old law school roommate. She was quite disturbed when she learned how you'd manipulated the legal system to steal my child. She's been helping me pro bono for the past 15 years. Charlotte sank into her chair. Sarah would and did, Emma interrupted. She kept copies of everything, including the messages where you bragged about how cleverly you'd managed the situation. Did you really think your friends would stay silent forever once they understood what you'd done? Lily stood abruptly, pacing to the window. I need air. This is too much. I'm sorry, Emma said softly. I know it's overwhelming, but you deserve to know everything. Everything. Lily turned back. Then tell me about that night. Tell me about Richard. Charlotte made a sound of protest, but Emma nodded. You're old enough to know. Richard had been interested in me since I turned 16. Charlotte knew but chose to believe I was being dramatic. The night you were conceived, there was a family celebration for Charlotte making partner. Richard had too much to drink. Charlotte went to bed early, and he... Stop, Charlotte pleaded. She doesn't need those details. She needs facts, Emma said firmly. He cornered me in the pool house. I fought, but he was stronger. When I told Charlotte the next morning, she accused me of trying to seduce her husband. When I found out I was pregnant 6 weeks later, she said I'd ruined everything. But the hospital records showed injuries, Lily said. She couldn't deny those. Emma's laugh was hollow. She didn't deny them. She just rewrote the narrative. In Charlotte's version, I'd been out partying, gotten involved with some stranger who hurt me and was trying to blame Richard to avoid shame. She was very convincing. Even our parents believed her. Where were they? Lily asked. Our grandparents. Where were they during all this? Dad had died 2 years before, Emma explained. Mom was in the early stages of Alzheimer's. Charlotte had power of attorney. She controlled everything. The money, the family narrative, the legal decisions. I was 18 with no resources and no credibility against the golden daughter who'd just made partner at 26. Charlotte finally spoke, her voice barely a whisper. I was trying to protect the family. You were protecting yourself, Emma said. And a man who went on to hurt 3 more women before his heart attack finally stopped him. Oh, you didn't know. About the others? I've spent years tracking down Richard's victims. Would you like to meet them, Charlotte? Would you like to explain to them how you enabled a predator for the sake of your career? The color drained from Charlotte's face completely. You're lying. Emma pulled out a final document. Police reports from Boston, New York, and Philadelphia. All filed after I left, all bearing striking similarities to what happened to me. All cases that mysteriously went nowhere after the victims received visits from lawyers representing the Madison family. Interest. The silence that followed Emma's revelation was deafening. Charlotte stared at the police report spread across her desk, her face a mask of dawning horror. For the first time in decades, the full scope of her choices lay bare before her, not just what she'd done to Emma, but what she'd enabled Richard to do to others. 3 women, Lily said, her voice hollow. 3 other women were hurt because you protected him. I didn't know, Charlotte whispered. I swear I didn't know about the others. But you knew about me, Emma said, and you chose to silence me. Every choice has ripples, Charlotte. Every lie enables the next one. Lily picked up one of the reports, scanning it with her trained legal eye. Jennifer Morrison, age 22, paralegal, at Brennan and Associates. That's Michael's firm. She reported an assault in 2003, 2 years after I was born. She looked up at Charlotte. Did Michael know? Charlotte's hands shook as she reached for the report. No, God, no. Jennifer left the firm suddenly. Michael said she'd gotten a better offer in California. She got $50,000 and a non-disclosure agreement, Emma supplied. Paid from an account linked to Richard's personal holdings. I have the banking records. How? Charlotte's voice cracked. How do you have all this? Emma smiled grimly. A quarter century is a long time, Charlotte. Long enough to hire forensic accountants, private investigators, and lawyers who actually believe in justice. Did you think I spent all those years in Europe just painting? I was building a case, not for revenge but for protection. I knew someday Lily would need proof. Someday facts would matter. There was a knock at the study door. Janet peered in, looking uncomfortable. Ms. Madison, Judge Sarah Winters is here. She says you're expecting her. Charlotte's face went white. I asked her to come, Emma said. Tell her we're ready. Sarah Winters entered with the bearing of someone who'd spent decades in family court. Her silver hair was pulled back severely, and her expression was grave. She looked at Charlotte with disappointment etched in every line of her face. Charlotte, she said simply, it's time. Sarah, you don't understand, Charlotte began. I understand perfectly, Sarah interrupted. I've understood since Emma first came to me decades ago, begging for help I was too cowardly to give. I've lived with that shame ever since. When she contacted me 5 years ago, I swore I wouldn't fail her again. Sarah set a thick legal file on the desk. This is a formal petition to overturn the adoption. Given the fraudulent circumstances, coercion and documented threats, any court would grant it immediately. But I'm an adult, Lily protested. The adoption can't be overturned now. It doesn't matter legally anymore. You're right, Sarah agreed. Legally, it's largely symbolic at your age. But symbols matter. Reality matters. And there are other implications. Inheritance, medical history, and most importantly, justice. Emma moved closer to Lily. I'm not trying to erase the past quarter century or take you away from the life you've built. But I want the record to show facts. I want it documented that I never gave you up. You were taken from me. And Charlotte? Lily asked, looking at the woman who'd raised her. What happens to her? Sarah and Emma exchanged glances. That depends, Sarah said carefully, on what Charlotte chooses to do now. Charlotte laughed bitterly. Choices? What choices do I have left? You've destroyed everything. No, Emma said, firmly. You destroyed everything decades ago. We're just documenting the damage, but you do have choices. You can fight this and watch it all come out in court. The assault, the cover-up, the other victims, the financial manipulation. Or, Charlotte asked, defeat evident in her voice. Or you can finally tell facts, Emma said. Publicly acknowledge what you did. Use your position and influence to help other women who've been silenced. Make amends to Richard's other victims. Try to build something good from all this pain. You want me to destroy my own reputation? I want you to own your choices, Emma said, just like I've owned mine. Every day for decades, I've owned the choice to stay away, rather than risk you having me arrested on false charges. I've owned the pain of missing every milestone in my daughter's life. Now it's your turn. Lily had been silent, absorbing everything. Finally, she spoke. I have a question for both of you. If Charlotte agrees to tell facts, to make amends, to acknowledge what happened, Emma, would you be willing to find a way forward? Not forgiveness necessarily, but something? Emma studied her daughter's face. What are you asking, Lily? I'm asking if there's any way to salvage something from this wreckage. You're my mother, my real mother, but Charlotte raised me. That's decades of complicated history. I'm angry, I'm hurt, I'm disgusted by what she did. But I also can't just erase the woman who taught me to tie my shoes and helped with my homework and sat by my bed when I was sick. Lily, Charlotte began, hope flickering in her eyes. I'm not doing this for you, Lily said sharply. I'm doing it for me, because I need to find a way to live with all of this, and I can't do that if we just burn everything down. Emma was quiet for a long moment. Then she looked at her sister, really looked at her for the first time in decades. The Charlotte I grew up with, the sister I loved, she was brilliant and driven and sometimes ruthless. But she wasn't cruel. I've spent a quarter century wondering if that person ever really existed, or if I just imagined her. Sarah Winters opened her legal briefcase with the practiced efficiency of someone who had presented devastating evidence countless times before. But her hands shook slightly as she laid out document after document on Charlotte's mahogany desk, creating a paper trail of decades of deception. Before we discuss moving forward, Sarah said, her judicial tone filling the room, Everyone needs to understand the full scope of what we're dealing with. She pulled out a thick folder marked Confidential, Madison v. Madison. Charlotte's intake of breath was sharp. That's sealed. How did you— Nothing stays sealed forever, Charlotte, Sarah interrupted. Especially when judges retire and develop consciences. Judge Rothman, who signed the original custody order, left a detailed memoir with his clerk before he died. He knew what you'd done. He knew the witnesses were coerced, the evidence fabricated. But you'd helped his son avoid a securities fraud charge, so he played along. She spread out a series of affidavits. Margaret Chen, the social worker who testified about Emma's instability, she's recanted. Says you threatened to have her license revoked if she didn't cooperate. Dr. Patricia Morse, who provided the psychological evaluation, she's willing to testify that you dictated what to write. Should I continue? Emma pulled out her own folder. There's more. Charlotte, do you remember Nancy Williams, your housekeeper in 2001? Charlotte's face went ashen. Nancy left for family reasons. Nancy left because she walked in on Richard attacking me, Emma said quietly. And you paid her $30,000 to disappear. But people don't really disappear anymore, they just relocate. She's living in Seattle now, running a domestic violence shelter. She's prepared to testify about what she saw and how you bought her silence. Lily was reading one of the documents, her legal training allowing her to process the information quickly despite her emotional turmoil. This transfer record, Charlotte, you moved $2.8 million from the family trust the week after I was born. The memo says it was for investment properties, but the dates match the payments to all these witnesses. That trust was meant for our family's future, Emma added. Instead, you used it to steal my future, my daughter. Sarah pulled out another set of papers. There's also the matter of the forged signatures. Emma, did you know Charlotte had been signing your name on documents for years after you left? Emma shook her head, and Sarah continued. Medical consent forms, school records, even birthday cards allegedly from you to Lily, all forged to maintain the fiction that you were voluntarily absent. The birthday cards were real, Charlotte protested weakly. I opened them first, made sure they were appropriate. You censored my mother's words to me. Lily's voice rose. What did she really write? What did you keep from me? Emma reached into her satchel one more time, pulling out a small box. Copies. I always made copies. She handed them to Lily. Every card, every letter I tried to send. The real ones, not Charlotte's edited versions. Lily opened the first card with unsteady hands, where the version she'd received had simply said, Happy 5th birthday, Lily. Love, Aunt Emma. The original read, My darling daughter, today you are 5, and I wonder if you still have my eyes, my smile. I dream of you every night. I love you beyond words, beyond distance, beyond the pain of separation. Forever, your mother, Emma. Oh God, Lily breathed, tears streaming down her face as she flipped through card after card. Decades of a mother's love censored down to generic pleasantries. But perhaps the most damning evidence, Sarah said, pulling out a final document, is this. She placed a medical record on the desk. Charlotte's own medical file from 2001. 3 separate fertility consultations in the 2 years before Lily was born. You couldn't have children, could you, Charlotte? The room went silent. Charlotte stared at the document as if it were a snake. That's why you were so eager to take Lily, Emma said, understanding dawning in her voice. It wasn't just about protecting Richard or the family name. You wanted a baby, And I had one. Richard gave you the perfect excuse to take what you couldn't create. That's not... I loved Lily from the moment, Charlotte stammered. I'm sure you did, Emma said. But love doesn't justify theft. Love doesn't excuse destroying your sister's life to fulfill your own dreams of motherhood. Sarah gathered the documents into neat piles. With this evidence, Charlotte could face multiple charges: fraud, conspiracy, witness tampering, forgery. The statute of limitations has run out on some, but not all. And the civil liabilities... She shook her head. Every person you paid off, threatened, or silenced could sue. The Madison family fortune would be decimated. Not to mention the Bar Association, Lily added quietly. Disbarment would be the least of it. Criminal prosecution of a prominent attorney with this level of documented misconduct. They'd make an example of you. Charlotte looked around the room, at her sister, her daughter, her former friend, and saw no allies, no escape routes, no legal maneuvers left. What do you want? She asked finally. What's your endgame? Emma leaned forward. I want you to look me in the eye and admit what you did. Not the sanitized version you've been telling yourself for decades, but facts, all of it. And then? Then we decide if there's any path forward that doesn't end with you in a courtroom, Sarah said. But that starts with honesty. Complete, unvarnished honesty. Charlotte closed her eyes, and when she opened them, decades of carefully maintained facades finally crumbled. I knew, she whispered. I knew what Richard was capable of before that night. I'd seen the way he looked at you, but I told myself I was imagining things, that I was being paranoid. And when it happened, she took a shuddering breath. When it happened, all I could think about was what it would mean for me, for my career, for the baby I couldn't have. I turned your trauma into my opportunity, and I've hated myself for it every day since. But not enough to stop, Emma said. No, Charlotte admitted. Not enough to stop. Because stopping would have meant admitting what I'd done. And I couldn't face that. So I just kept building lies on top of lies until I couldn't see facts anymore. It was the first honest thing she'd said in decades. The admission hung in the air like a physical presence. Charlotte's confession, raw, unfiltered, and, decades overdue, seemed to shift the very atmosphere of the room. For a moment no one moved, as if they were all afraid that any motion might shatter this fragile moment of honesty. Michael Brennan's voice from the doorway broke the spell. I think I've heard enough. Everyone turned to find Charlotte's law partner standing in the entrance, his face a mask of professional composure barely containing personal devastation. Behind him stood two other senior partners from Madison and Associates. Michael, Charlotte started to rise. How long have you... Long enough, he said curtly. Janet was concerned when Judge Winters arrived. She thought you might need support. His laugh was bitter. I see now you need something quite different from support. The two partners behind him, Patricia Lowe and James Garrison, both equity shareholders in the firm, looked equally stunned. Patricia, who had mentored Charlotte early in her career, seemed to age years in moments. The Morrison case, Patricia said slowly. Jennifer Morrison. She was assaulted at our firm's holiday party. You told us she was unstable, that her accusations were baseless. We believed you, because I'd built my entire reputation on being trustworthy, Charlotte said, sinking back into her chair. Who would doubt Charlotte Madison's word? Apparently we shouldn't have, James said coldly. Do you have any idea what this means? For the firm, every case you've touched, every client you've represented, They'll all be subject to review. The liability alone. Sarah Winters stepped forward. Gentlemen, Ms. Lowe, perhaps we should discuss the firm's exposure privately. This is a family matter. No, Michael interrupted. This stopped being just a family matter the moment Charlotte used the firm's resources and reputation to perpetrate fraud. We have a fiduciary duty to our clients and our partners. Emma watched the proceedings with a mixture of satisfaction and sorrow. You see, Charlotte, this is how it happens. One lie requires another, then another, until entire institutions are corrupted. Your law firm, built on principles of justice, became an accomplice to injustice because you needed it to be. The board will need to meet immediately, Patricia said, already pulling out her phone. Charlotte, I'm sorry, but you'll need to be placed on administrative leave pending a full investigation. Of course, Charlotte said numbly. I understand. Lily watched her adoptive mother, the woman she'd seen as invincible her entire life, shrink before her eyes. Wait, she said suddenly. Before everyone scatters to protect themselves, we need to finish this conversation. Michael paused. Lily, I understand this is difficult, but the firm has to protect itself. The firm will survive, Lily said with surprising authority. It existed before Charlotte and will exist after. But right now, we're dealing with decades of damage to real people. That takes precedence over corporate liability. She turned to Emma. Mom. The word slipped out naturally, causing Emma to gasp softly. What do you need to move forward? Not legally, but personally. What would begin to make this right? Emma's eyes filled with tears at hearing that word from her daughter's lips. I've dreamed of this moment for so long, but now that it's here, she paused, collecting herself. I want my daughter to know who I really am, not the fiction Charlotte created. I want the chance to be part of your life, if you'll have me. And Charlotte? Lily asked. What about her? Emma looked at her sister, seeing not the powerful attorney, but the broken woman who'd lost her way. I want her to use her position, whatever remains of it, to help other women who've been silenced. I want her to understand the damage she's done and work to undo it where possible. A restorative justice approach, Sarah mused. It has merit, but it would require Charlotte's full cooperation and genuine commitment to change. Charlotte looked up, a spark of something, hope, in her eyes. What would that look like? First, full disclosure to Richard's other victims, with compensation from your personal assets, Emma said. Second, a foundation dedicated to helping women who've been assaulted navigate the legal system, the opposite of what you did to me. Third, regular therapy to understand why you made the choices you did. And fourth, Lily added, family therapy. All three of us, if Emma's willing, because whether we like it or not, we're connected. The lies don't change that. They just made it toxic instead of healthy. Michael cleared his throat. From the firm's perspective, if Charlotte were to proactively address these issues, establish a remediation fund for any affected parties, and transition her cases responsibly, we might avoid the worst of the fallout. You're talking about me. Like I'm not here, Charlotte said. You made yourself disappear decades ago, Patricia replied. You've been a ghost pretending to be a person ever since. Maybe it's time to become real again. Charlotte's phone buzzed. She glanced at it and laughed. Sound devoid of humor. The Barrett Foundation. They're calling about the Women in Law award they're giving me next month, recognizing my contributions to advancing women in the legal profession. She looked at Emma. The irony is suffocating. Turn it down, Emma suggested. Or better yet, accept it and use the platform to tell facts. Imagine the impact if Charlotte Madison, feminist legal icon, admitted to silencing a sexual assault survivor. The conversations it could start, the women it might help find their voices. You want me to destroy myself publicly? Charlotte asked. I want you to stop hiding behind the persona you created, Emma said. I want Charlotte Madison, the scared woman who made terrible choices, to finally take responsibility. Maybe in doing that, you'll find the person you were before fear and ambition consumed you. The room fell silent as everyone considered the path forward. It wouldn't be easy. Nothing about this situation could be. But for the first time in decades, all the cards were on the table, all the players revealed. I'll do it, Charlotte said finally. All of it. The disclosure, the foundation, the therapy, the speech. God help me. I'll do it all. Why? Lily asked. Why now? When you're forced to, instead of years ago when you had the chance. Charlotte met her daughter's eyes. Because I'm tired of being afraid. I've spent decades terrified that facts would destroy me. But the lies already did that. Maybe honesty can build something better from the ruins. 6 weeks later, the grand ballroom of the Hartford Hilton was packed with the state's legal elite. The annual Barrett Foundation Awards dinner had drawn its usual crowd of judges, partners, and rising stars, all gathered to celebrate excellence in the legal profession. At the head table, Charlotte Madison sat with uncharacteristic stillness, her prepared speech folded in her jacket pocket. You don't have to do this, Michael Brennan whispered beside her. He'd remained supportive despite the chaos at the firm, though their partnership had been formally dissolved. The foundation would understand if you withdrew. No, Charlotte said quietly. I need to do this. Emma's right, the platform matters. Across the ballroom, Emma and Lily sat together at a table near the back. They'd come at Charlotte's request, though the past 6 weeks of family therapy had been brutal for all involved. Dr. Sarah Chen, their therapist, had warned them that healing generational trauma wasn't a linear process. Tonight would be another test. She looks terrified, Lily observed, watching Charlotte accept polite congratulations from colleagues who didn't yet know what was coming. She should be, Emma replied, but not unkindly. She's about to voluntarily give up everything she spent her life building. That takes a different kind of courage than maintaining a lie. The foundation's president took the podium, beginning the familiar introduction. Charlotte Madison has been a trailblazer for women in law for over 2 decades. Her work in family law has protected countless women and children, and her mentorship has launched dozens of careers. It's my honor to present the Women in Law Excellence Award to Charlotte Madison. The applause was thunderous as Charlotte approached the microphone. She waited for it to die down, then waited a beat longer, gathering her courage. Thank you for this honor, she began, her voice steady despite her racing heart. But I'm afraid I can't accept it. Not without first telling you why I'm the last person who should be receiving an award for advancing women in the legal profession. A confused murmur rippled through the crowd. Charlotte saw several phones come out, likely ready to record whatever scandal was about to unfold. A quarter century ago, Charlotte continued, I used my position, my knowledge, and my reputation to silence a sexual assault survivor. That survivor was my own sister, Emma, and her assailant was my late husband, Richard Madison. The murmur became a roar. Charlotte waited for quiet, her hands gripping the podium. Instead of protecting her, instead of seeking justice, I threatened. her with fabricated charges. I paid witnesses to lie. I used every legal maneuver I knew to steal her newborn daughter. My daughter, Lily, who I raised as my own after forcing Emma to sign adoption papers under duress. Several people stood to leave, but most remained frozen in shock. Charlotte could see former clients in the audience, women she'd helped through their own custody battles, their faces showing betrayal and disbelief. I told myself I was protecting the family, the firm, my career. But the reality is, I was protecting a predator. Richard went on to assault at least 3 other women that I know of, women whose silence was bought with Madison family money, women who might have been spared if I'd had the courage to stop him when Emma came to me. Charlotte found Emma's face in the crowd. Her sister was crying, but nodded encouragingly. I've spent my career claiming to champion women while embodying the very systems that oppress them. I chose power over principle, reputation over righteousness. I became everything I claimed to stand against, a woman who silences other women to protect the status quo. The ballroom was absolutely silent now. Charlotte saw Patricia Lowe recording on her phone, probably for the other partners. Tomorrow, there would be calls for her disbarment. She welcomed them. The daughter I raised, Lily Madison, uncovered the facts on her own. She had the courage to confront me, to demand answers I'd hidden for decades. Her real mother, Emma, has shown me more grace than I deserve by allowing me the chance to make amends instead of pursuing the criminal charges she could rightfully bring. Charlotte pulled out a check from her pocket. This represents the liquidation of my personal assets, approximately $4.2 million. It will fund the Emma Madison Foundation for Survivors' legal support. My sister will direct it, ensuring that women who face what she faced will have the legal resources to fight back, not a legal system weaponized against them. Gasps echoed through the room. That amount represented everything: Charlotte's house, investments, retirement savings. I will be stepping away from the practice of law, pending the Bar Association's investigation. But before I do, I want to say this to any woman here who has been silenced, threatened, or coerced into abandoning her reality. I'm sorry. I'm sorry for every lawyer like me who valued winning over justice. I'm sorry for every system that protected predators while blaming victims. I'm sorry for every time the law failed you because people like me twisted it to serve power instead of justice. Charlotte stepped back from the microphone, then returned for one final statement. Emma, if you're willing, I'd like to present you with this award. You're the one who truly deserves it. You fought a system designed to crush you and survived. You protected other women even when you couldn't protect yourself. You chose honesty over comfort, integrity over security. You are everything this award should represent. Emma stood slowly, Lily beside her. Together, they walked through the silent ballroom, their footsteps echoing on the polished floor. When they reached the stage, Charlotte held out the crystal, award with unsteady hands. I can't undo what I did, Charlotte said into the microphone, her voice breaking. But I can use whatever platform remains to me to fight the systems that enable such injustice. Emma Madison is my sister, my victim, and my teacher. She deserves your recognition, not me. Emma took the award, then surprised everyone by pulling Charlotte into an embrace. The sister I grew up with was brave, she whispered, loud enough for the microphone to catch. Maybe she's finally finding her way back. As the 3 women stood together on stage, victim, perpetrator, and the daughter caught between them, the ballroom erupted. Some applauded, some booed. Many simply sat in stunned silence. But none of that mattered to the three women finding their way toward a different kind of family, built on honesty instead of lies. 1 year later, the offices of the Emma Madison Foundation occupied a renovated brownstone in Hartford South, and a deliberate choice to be accessible to the communities most in need of its services. The morning sun streamed through windows that had once been boarded up, illuminating a space that buzzed with purposeful activity. Emma stood in the main conference room, reviewing case files with her team of attorneys, all women who had left prestigious firms to work for significantly less money but infinitely more meaning. Among them was Jennifer Morrison, Richard's victim from 2003, who had become the Foundation's lead counsel. "We have 17 active cases this month," Jennifer reported, her voice strong and clear, a far cry from the terrified paralegal who had been silenced 20 years ago. 3 involve prominent defendants trying to use NDAs to silence assault survivors. Thanks to the new legislation Charlotte helped draft, those NDAs are now legally challengeable. Emma nodded, making notes. Charlotte's public confession had sparked a legislative review of how NDAs were used in assault cases. Working behind the scenes, Charlotte had used her remaining influence to help craft and promote bills that would protect future victims from the legal tactics she'd once employed. "Speaking of Charlotte," Jennifer continued carefully, "she's here for the monthly review." Through the glass doors, Emma could see her sister in the waiting area, dressed simply in jeans and a sweater, a far cry from her former power suits. Charlotte's hair had grown out to its natural brown, the silver streaks she'd once hidden now worn without shame. She was reading to a small child whose mother was meeting with one of the Foundation's lawyers. The past year had been a journey none of them could have anticipated. Charlotte's disbarment had been swift, but not vindictive. The Bar Association had acknowledged her cooperation and restitution efforts. She'd lost her career, her reputation, and most of her former social circle, but she'd gained something harder to define, a tentative peace with herself. "Send her in," Emma said. Charlotte entered carrying a box of files. "The last of the Morrison case documentation," she said, setting it on the table. "I've also finished reviewing the Westfield depositions. There's a pattern of witness coaching that mirrors what I did with Emma's case. I've prepared a detailed analysis." It was part of Charlotte's restitution, using her legal knowledge to help the Foundation identify and combat the tactics she'd once employed. She worked as a volunteer consultant, applying decades of legal expertise to undoing the damage such expertise could cause. "Thank you," Emma said formally, then softening slightly. "How was therapy yesterday?" "Difficult," Charlotte admitted. "Dr. Chen is having me work through the night Richard died. I spent so many years painting him as a victim of his heart condition, I'd almost forgotten that I felt relief when it happened." Jennifer excused herself, giving the sisters privacy. The relationship between Emma and Charlotte remained complicated, not quite forgiveness, not quite friendship, but something necessary and evolving. "Lily called this morning," Emma said. "She passed the bar exam." Charlotte's face lit up with genuine pride. "First try. I knew she would." "She's decided to join the Foundation," Emma continued, watching her sister's reaction. "Said she wants to use her Madison legal training for something meaningful." Tears gathered in Charlotte's eyes. That's wonderful. You must be so proud." "We both raised her," Emma said quietly. "The pride belongs to both of us, complicated as that is." A knock interrupted them. Lily herself stood in the doorway, professional in her new suit, but with a warmth that hadn't been there a year ago. The three women still met for family therapy twice a month, slowly untangling decades of trauma and lies. "Am I interrupting?" Lily asked. "No," both women said simultaneously, then shared a small smile at the synchronicity. "I wanted to talk to you both about something," Lily said, taking a seat. "I've been thinking about my name." Charlotte stiffened slightly. This had been a recurring topic in therapy. Lily's identity caught between two mothers, two realities. "I want to keep Madison," Lily continued, "not because of Richard, but because it connects me to both of you, to our grandmother, to the family, history before everything went wrong. But I want to add something." She pulled out a legal document. "Lily Emma Madison, adding my birth mother's name officially, if that's okay with both of you." Emma's hand flew to her mouth. Charlotte reached over, squeezing her sister's hand briefly. "It's perfect," Charlotte said. "A name that tells the whole story." Later that afternoon, the foundation hosted its monthly support group for survivors. Emma facilitated while Charlotte worked in the back office, maintaining the careful boundaries they'd established. Through the thin walls, Charlotte could hear women sharing their stories, finding their voices, reclaiming their power. One voice stood out, young, trembling, but determined. "My brother-in-law assaulted me and my sister doesn't believe me. She says I'm trying to destroy her marriage. I don't know what to do." Charlotte closed her eyes, remembering another young voice saying similar words 26 years ago. But this time, the response was different. This time, Emma's voice carried the authority of survival and the promise of support. "We believe you," Emma said firmly, "and we're going to help you. Your sister may not be ready to hear the facts, but that doesn't make it any less real. You're safe here." Charlotte returned to her work, documenting the legal strategies that could help this young woman. She couldn't undo her past, but she could help ensure that other women wouldn't face the same systematic silencing Emma had endured. As the sun set over Hartford, the foundation's lights remained on, a beacon for those seeking justice in a system that too often failed them. Inside, three women bound by trauma but united in purpose continued their work, building something stronger than the lies that had once defined them. The Emma Madison Foundation's motto, etched in brass by the entrance, said it all. Reality survives. Justice endures. Survivors rise. 5 years after that fateful 25th birthday, Lily Emma Madison stood before the Connecticut Supreme Court, delivering her closing argument in a landmark case that would redefine how the state handled coerced adoption agreements. Her client, a young mother fighting to overturn a fraudulent adoption, sat behind her with quiet dignity. "Your Honors," Lily said, her voice carrying the conviction of personal experience, "the law must recognize that consent obtained through threats, lies, and abuse of power is no consent at all. My client's case is not unique. It represents thousands of women who have been separated from their children, not by choice, but by systemic failures that weaponize their vulnerabilities against them." In the gallery, Emma and Charlotte sat side by side, not as friends exactly, but as family members who had learned to coexist within their complicated reality. Charlotte took notes, preparing for the law review article she would ghostwrite about the case. Her disbarment prevented her from practicing law, but not from contributing to legal scholarship under Emma's supervision. The years had aged them both, but differently. Emma had grown into her role as a nationally recognized advocate, testifying before Congress about adoption fraud and traveling to speak at conferences worldwide. The paintings in her Prague gallery now sold for substantial sums, all proceeds funding the foundation's work. Charlotte had become something harder to define, part cautionary tale, part redemption story, full-time seeker of atonement. She lived, simply in a small apartment, teaching paralegal students about legal ethics by sharing her own failures. I show them how easy it is to rationalize the unethical, she'd told Dr. Chen in their ongoing therapy, and how impossible it becomes to live with yourself afterward. As Lily concluded her argument, both women saw shades of themselves in her, Emma's passion for justice, Charlotte's legal brilliance, and something uniquely her own, the ability to transform personal pain into professional purpose. After court adjourned, the three women met at their usual cafe, a weekly tradition that had developed organically over the years. Lily was animated, discussing the case's implications, while Emma offered insights from similar cases the foundation had handled. The justices seemed receptive, Charlotte observed. Justice Patterson's questions about the original intent of adoption law were particularly encouraging. "You always could read a courtroom," Emma said, then caught herself. Even after 5 years, compliments between them felt loaded with history. Lily's phone buzzed. She glanced at it and smiled. "It's Marcus. He's landed in Prague safely. The exhibition opens tomorrow." Marcus was Lily's partner, an artist she'd met through Emma's gallery connections. Their relationship was built on honesty. Lily had told him everything about her family's history on their third date, unwilling to build anything on hidden facts. "How long will he be gone?" Emma asked. 2 weeks. Actually, Lily hesitated, then pulled out an envelope. "That's something I wanted to discuss. Marcus asked me to marry him last week." Both women froze, then spoke simultaneously. "That's wonderful," from Emma. "Are you sure?" from Charlotte. They looked at each other, a moment of tension flickering before Lily laughed. "And that right there is why I need you both. Emma tells me to embrace joy. Charlotte reminds me to be careful. Somehow, between the two of you, find my balance." "So you said yes?" Emma asked hopefully. "I said I needed to think about it," Lily replied. "Not because I don't love him, but because I want to be sure I'm making the choice for the right reasons, not running towards something because I'm running from something else." Charlotte nodded approvingly. "That's wise. Marriage is—" She stopped, realizing the irony of her giving marriage advice. "It's okay," Lily said gently. "Your marriage to Richard was many things, but it wasn't meaningless. I exist because of it. The foundation exists because of what we learned from its failures. Even our pain has purpose." Emma reached across the table, taking both Lily's and Charlotte's hands. The gesture surprised all of them. Physical affection between the sisters remained rare. "I've been thinking," Emma said, "about forgiveness. Dr. Chen says I don't have to forgive to heal, and maybe that's accurate. But I've realized something. I'm tired of carrying the weight of what happened. Not the facts of it. That will always be part of our story. But the anger, the bitterness, I think I'm ready to let those go." Charlotte's eyes filled with tears. "Emma, I don't expect—" "I know," Emma interrupted. "You've never asked for forgiveness. You've just worked to earn it. And maybe that's why I can finally consider offering it. Not absolution. What happened, happened. But release. For both of us." Lily watched her mothers, because that's how she'd come to think of them, complicated as it was, navigate this moment. 5 years of therapy, legal battles, and painstaking relationship rebuilding had led here to a simple cafe table where 3 women tried to forge something new from the wreckage of the past. The foundation is expanding, Emma continued, her voice stronger now. We're opening satellites in Boston and New York. Jennifer will run Boston, but I need someone with experience to help establish New York. She looked at Charlotte. Someone who knows how the system protects predators. Someone committed to changing it. You're offering me a job? Charlotte asked, stunned. I'm offering you a chance to use your knowledge for its intended purpose, justice. You'd work under supervision. Of course, your history would be fully disclosed, but your expertise could help women who need it most. Charlotte looked at Lily, seeking permission or approval. Lily nodded slowly. Mom, Charlotte, you've spent 5 years proving your commitment to change. Maybe it's time to stop punishing yourself and start building something better. As they left the cafe, walking together through Hartford's streets, they passed the old Madison and Associates building. Charlotte's name had been removed from the partnership plaque years ago, but she barely glanced at it. Her identity was no longer tied to the empire she'd built on lies. Instead, she walked between her daughter and her sister, 3 women forever bound by a reality that had nearly destroyed them, but ultimately set them free. The Emma Madison Foundation's latest billboard loomed above them, featuring a simple message. Your truth matters. We'll help you tell it. Lily looked up at the billboard, then at the 2 women who had shaped her life in such different ways. I think I'll say yes to Marcus, she said suddenly, not because I'm running from the past, but because I'm running toward a future built on honesty. Emma smiled. Charlotte nodded, and together they continued walking, 3 survivors of their own complicated story, proof that even the deepest betrayals could eventually lead to something resembling redemption. Later that evening, Lily sat in her apartment, drafting an email to Marcus in Prague. She wrote about the court case, about her mother's conversation, about her decision to accept his proposal. But mostly, she wrote about how their story had taught her that love wasn't just about the perfect moments. It was about choosing honesty even when lies were easier, choosing growth even when staying broken felt safer. My family taught me that. Secrets are poison, she wrote. That love built on lies will always crumble. But they also taught me that people can change, that redemption is possible, and that sometimes the most broken things can be rebuilt into something stronger. I want to build that kind of life with you, honest, complicated, real. Across town, Charlotte sat in her sparse apartment, looking at the job offer Emma had formalized that afternoon. The salary was modest, the position clearly subordinate, the work emotionally grueling. It was also the first opportunity in 5 years that felt like a step forward rather than penance. She picked up her phone and dialed a number she'd called every month for 5 years, always getting voicemail. This time, someone answered. Nancy? Charlotte said to her former housekeeper. It's Charlotte Madison. I know you probably don't want to hear from me, but I wanted you to know. The foundation Emma runs, they could use someone with your experience at the shelter. Someone who understands domestic violence from multiple angles. I could put in a word if you're interested, not as Charlotte Madison the lawyer, but as someone trying to make amends. There was a long pause. Then Nancy's voice, older but unmistakable. I heard about what you did. The speech, giving up everything. That took guts. It took my daughter. Discovering the facts, Charlotte admitted. I'm not brave, Nancy. I'm just trying to be less of a coward than I was. Aren't we all? Nancy said softly. Send me the information. Maybe it's time we both stopped running from the past. Meanwhile, Emma stood in the Foundation's after-hours quiet, looking at the wall of thank you letters from women they'd helped. Each one represented a story of survival, a reality told despite the odds. Her phone buzzed with a text from Lily. Said yes to Marcus. Thank you for showing me that love can survive honesty. Emma smiled, then noticed a new letter on her desk, forwarded from her Prague gallery. The return address made her heart skip. It was from one of the other women Richard had assaulted, someone they'd been trying to locate for years. Dear Ms. Madison, the letter read, I heard about your foundation and your sister's confession. For 20 years, I thought I was alone, that what happened to me was my fault. Thank you for proving that silence isn't safety, and that facts, however delayed, still matter. I'm ready to tell my story now. Emma added the letter to the wall, another testament to the power of breaking silence. Tomorrow, she would call this woman, offer support, add another voice to the chorus of survivors refusing to be silenced. As midnight approached in Hartford, 3 women in different parts of the city prepared for sleep, each carrying their own version of the same story. Charlotte drafted plans for the New York office, channeling decades of legal experience toward justice instead of concealment. Emma responded to emails from survivors worldwide, her gallery's success funding hope for women who'd lost theirs. Lily lay beside her phone, waiting for Marcus's response from Prague, building a future on the foundation of honesty her mothers had finally, painfully, established. The Madison family scandal had long since faded from public memory, replaced by newer revelations and fresher outrages. But in the quiet corners where women's facts had been buried, the Emma Madison Foundation continued its work. Every coerced adoption overturned, every survivor believed, every predator held accountable. All were ripples from one young woman's 25th birthday discovery. In her apartment, Charlotte kept a photo from the Foundation's latest fundraiser on her nightstand. It showed her and Emma flanking Lily at the podium, 3 women who'd found their way through betrayal to something resembling family. Not the family any of them had imagined, but the one they'd chosen to build from the ruins of lies. The inscription on the frame in Lily's handwriting read, "Reality doesn't erase the past, but it can transform the future. Thank you both for showing me how." As Hartford slept, the Foundation's emergency helpline remained active, staffed by volunteers who understood that reality could arrive at any hour. Somewhere, a woman was finding the courage to speak. Somewhere, a survivor was being believed. Somewhere, the cycle of silence was breaking, and in 3 different homes, 3 women who'd learned that family could survive even the deepest betrayals slept peacefully, knowing that tomorrow would bring new challenges but no new lies. They had paid the price for honesty in full, and found it worth every loss it had demanded. The Emma Madison Foundation's motto glowed softly in the darkness outside the brownstone, a beacon for those still searching for their voices. Reality survives, justice endures, survivors rise. Indeed, they had all risen. Not despite their story, but because of it. Not perfect, not fully healed, but honest at last. And in that honesty, they had found something more valuable than the empire of lies Charlotte had once protected. They had found their way home to each other.